Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming to the recording of this. We did have a little bit of a delay, so I'm going to bring back some slides here just to give everyone a quick introduction of what we're going to be discussing this afternoon. Once again, my name is Maestrisa Dokainina Siracusina. I'm a member of the Order of the Laurel, currently residing in the Kingdom of Trimaris. Our agenda for the day, I just got offered a beer. The Trimaris watch party, y'all. I already discussed a little bit my anecdotal experiences, and we're going to go ahead and start progressing into, is the military actually marginalized? What service members endure inside and outside of the SCA? How to be a chatelaine in military heavy areas? And of course, service members speak up. Here's a brief introduction of both myself and my husband. As I previously stated, my husband did lose his life to neuroendocrine carcinoma last March. He was a member of the United States Submarine Service, serving as a chief petty officer. He was an 11th century Norman, and he liked making loud. I am an 11th century Byzantine persona, and I am currently a PhD candidate at the University of South Florida, where I am studying digital archaeology, and I spend a lot of time in the Mediterranean these days. So just to get back on track, here is by the numbers again. I'm not going to have time to reread all of this, but please take a moment, take a screenshot, get a sense for just how many military personnel of various walks of life, whether they're veteran, disabled, reserve, active duty, a member of a minority group that they currently identify as, if they identify as LGBTQ+, and just putting these numbers in perspective with the paid members currently in the SCA. And as I mentioned, also nearly every continental United States installation has a unit from another country serving. So much like the United States serves abroad, we have many foreign service members here in the United States working with our forces every day. Overly positive experience for the most part. Again, I have lived in the East Kingdom, Caid, Trimaris, and Atlantia. People were always for the most part, very kind to us, very accepting. It didn't always work that way though. So back to where I was here. Yeah, some things did get quite rough at times. Like we had the 23-year Air Force veteran tell us to be ready to be transient SCA nobodies. I had a royal peer tell me that I signed up for this, you stupid redacted, when I got mad at my husband for posting his orders to Norfolk on Facebook before calling me to tell me that orders had been cut. My husband was constantly harassed regarding crafts while he was busy. If I was told that if he was around more, he'd actually be a peer by now, which he had so much control over, of course. I had a prince of a kingdom that my husband was close with at the time asking for coins, but Jeff was put on an underway because needs of the Navy come before needs of the SCA. And he was hounding me constantly about my husband making him coins for his reign. And of course, I had people trying to get the address to the submarine so that they could send things to be fixed or worked on, and asking for commissions while Jeff was deployed. Jeff never took commissions, by the way. He only made things out of the kindness of his heart if he liked you enough and if he had the time to do so. That bottom line is a little nasty. So, dependa, by the way, is a slur geared toward military spouses. Now, some people say it's a mixture of dependent and Brenda, much like how we use Karen as a slur now, and or dependopotamus. And the caricature of a dependa is an overweight woman who has about 37 children, spends all of her husband's money at the exchange buying Michael Kors bags, eats at the base McDonald's constantly, has many affairs, and keeps popping out kids in order to receive more benefits. I was called this while I was at Penzic in 2016 when it was about 115 degrees outside. I flew in from San Diego, from Caid, for that event because a friend of mine was being elevated and I really wanted to go. And obviously it was hot. We were all miserable. I basically had a meltdown and someone started to be quite cruel to me, and I'm just like, "You have no reason to speak to me like this." I started screaming at him, and he's like, "You are nothing but a tax dollar stealing dependa. You only married Jeff for his money and for benefits. You're a waste of oxygen." This is literally what somebody in my household was telling me at Penzic. Now, he has never served. He is 100% that guy who thinks he's tough on Facebook that goes, "Yeah, I totally woulda, like, signed up, but, I woulda totally punched the drill instructor." Yeah, we all know that guy, right? Yeah, no. So at that point, it was decided when I flew home 2 days early from Penzic and cried on my husband's lap on the couch that I would no longer be attending, um, Penzic by myself and dealing with that individual. But are you actually marginalized? You're not POC or LGBTQ, you're just in the military. Thank you for your service anyway. First of all, I'm an openly out bisexual woman, and we were in a straight passing marriage. So, actually, yes, I am LGBTQ, but that doesn't matter because you're looking at my husband's uniform because before you're looking at anything else, and want to assume that because of the way the culture is in the United States that we're some sort of protected class, but that's not actually the case. These are actual screenshots from the discussion area of the 2021 panel given by the DEIB office, the SCA DEIB office, and the 2016 thread about the Penzic cannons, and I'll get that to a second. This was a nightmare. So my husband and I were actually very excited to see that the military was being included because we're like, oh, this is a great chance to see if people have similar experiences to us so we can make friends, make connections, and see what's going on for everybody else. But the comment section before the event even happened was an absolute mess. And there was a few people who decided they were just going to troll, and I do have nothing but thanks and applauses and hugs to give the staff, especially Baroness Zara, for wrangling this nightmare of a thread. People were like, "Well, what does this have to do with the SCA?" And everyone's like, "Well, PTSD, disabilities, etc." And then you have someone here speaking up, talking about how their first large event in 2016, he was still active duty and he was wired a bit wired a bit tight at the time. The amount of stress that comes with being active duty takes a toll. And sometimes that toll rolls over into the SCA, sometimes in the form of post-traumatic stress disorder, and we'll get to that as well. And then I had someone ask me if I felt marginalized because I'm just like, my husband's active duty. We've been in 4 kingdoms in 5 years. There's plenty to discuss, right? And everyone's just like, but do you feel marginalized? Because you're not checking the boxes. And that box checking comes up again when someone decided to say there needs to be at least one visible minority on the panel. And thankfully, the DEIB staff came in and a few other people were like, you can't do that. You DEIB is not checking every box. As far as I'm concerned, the military fits in that inclusion and belonging, not necessarily diversity or equity, but definitely inclusion and belonging. We have a voice as much as everybody else does. And and so they point out asking to have these boxes checked on a panel is tokenism and performative, and that's not what they wanted to do. Of course, we are a volunteer organization. The panel was all volunteer. Nobody from these communities volunteered, so you work with what you have. The voices should still matter. And here is Zara actually going ahead and saying that she was, uh, you know, disappointed that, excuse me, this view was, coming out that, why are you being this way toward the military personnel who just want to talk about their experiences in the SCA? These voices matter. She wanted to include members of various, marginalized groups, but she will not allow marginalized voices to go heard to create that picture perfect representation of diversity. If you go back to that slide where I broke down a little bit of the numbers, 41%, that's less than half of the United States military currently identifies with a minority group. And even less than that, a very small single digit percentage is currently out as LGBTQ plus. Even in the wake of the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, there's still a great deal of stigma involving that. There's also the issue, of course, that um, the Uniform Code of Military Justice, speaking about your experiences in a way that might come up political or anything like that, can actually get you in some hot water. So I can absolutely see why the panel was the way that it was. This one irked me really bad. So the Penzic cannons have been a hot topic for a while. And when I was looking for some sources, this particular person, I just sat agape. And when you read it, you're like, wait, what? Another option for those who have problems with the cannons would be to go for peace week only. Battles and thus cannon signals started Monday of War Week. Could you imagine planning for Penzic, planning to fight, planning to camp, doing all of this, and someone basically saying, because you don't like the cannons or because you have PTSD from service, you are not welcome? And that to me speaks volumes. Now, thanks to these threads and thanks to people constantly speaking out, we now have the Canon Advanced Warning System at Penzic for those that do need to know when the cannons are going to go boom, so they're aware that, to prepare themselves for this so they're not caught off guard and could potentially, have a severe reaction to that sound. I do have to give nothing but praise to the company of St. Barbara, the cannoneers at Penzic, for being the most receptive and helpful during that discussion. Everyone who seemed to be making these remarks like, we'll just stay home, don't go on, war week kind of remarks, seemed to be completely civilian. And that information, by the way, this is a thing now. So if you are interested in working with the Canada Advanced Warning System, please reach out to Jennifer Clark at the Silver Tree Souk. She'd be happy to go ahead and include you in that process. I believe they're using text messages now. Of course, when you know it's bad, when the scallion gets involved. I mean, here we are, folks, right? United States Marines, sick of explaining who they are and why they aren't a peer yet. So this is short, and for accessibility, I'm just going to read it really quick. After their first permanent change of station, fifth permanent change of station in 7 years, gosh, that sounds familiar, a U.S. Marine Staff Sergeant who has asked to remain anonymous lamented to the Scallion that they think the 3 AOAs I have from 3 different kingdoms is nice and all, but it's like we don't even matter to the society. When questioned, the current secretary of the West Kingdom's Order of the Pelican, Master Ian of Colchester, shrugged. I've never even heard of the guy. The United States Marine has entries on 4 kingdom orders of precedence, each one incomplete. The former Baron of Calafia, Caid, had this to say about the Gentle. It was extraordinary what they did when they took down the Bear single-handedly at Potrero War while they were stationed at Camp Pendleton, but we think they just need a few more years to really come into their own. I could have written this. I didn't. And this is from almost a year ago when the Scallion was brand new. They're having their birthday today. So if you get a chance, please go wish the Scallion a happy birthday. But to see this come up last year, literally a few days after I was asked to teach this, when this Collegium was in the beginning stages, I was like, wow. Well, talk about timing, right? So this is just an example of what U.S. service members endure in the real life. So outside of the SCA, this is some of the challenges that they experience. I don't want to say we. I am not the service member. I was never the service member, and I do not I never got my husband's rank tattooed on me, just to, I'm not like that at all. But so, obviously some terminology as well we'll go into, but I just want to point out that I cannot speak to the experience of NATO forces stationed at U.S. installations or how other nations treat their service members. But I'm assuming that some things are probably pretty similar across the board. But you might have heard me say the term PCS a few times. That means permanent change of station. Each service has different cycles. The Navy, for example, typically operates at 3 years sea duty, 2 years shore duty. Each ship has a different requirement for deployment and underways, with fast attack submarines deploying for 6 months and workups prior to deployments lasting 1 week to 1 month. So Jeff was never home when we lived in Caid, for example. I swear people thought he was imaginary. The US Air Force, for example, has annual 3 month deployments in addition to PCSing every 3 years. Uh, the Army has completely different requirements. Sometimes deployment doesn't happen for a while, sometimes it does. It depends on the needs of that particular service. Deployments can also get extended. You never know what's going to happen. For example, hot fill orders. This is when orders change quickly to fill a slot. This happened to us. Orders are never set in stone until the butt is in the seat. Why? Because paper burns. When we were in San Diego, we were cut orders to return back to Groton. 10 days out from turnover, the Navy's like, no, just kidding. We're sending you to Georgia. You want to know what a mental breakdown is? Because that is that's when I knew I felt like I was done, because at that point in time we had already had a house, I had a job lined up, and then it was all taken away from me. And I had to start all over again. Housing shortages. Installations don't have enough homes for service members, and the public private venture structures are often decaying and structurally unsound. You might have seen lawsuits recently involving this. They've had congressional hearings involving military housing. And I've had people saying, well, just don't live in housing. Well, when you are cut orders suddenly and they're like, you're not moving here, you're moving there, pack up and go, you don't have a choice. So we were in some pretty crappy housing at Mayport before we were able to get out of there for Virginia. We were waitlisted for housing until 2 months before we left to Virginia. And they're just like, oh, hey, we got a nice house for you. Wow, thanks. Appreciate that. Reservists matter too. They don't get to pick their schedule, and it's usually more than that 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year you hear in the commercials. Yeah, you're going to throw that out the window. It's not at all what you think it is. Reservists also don't receive the same benefits as active duty, and it's much harder to receive VA benefits upon retirement. Usually you have to be in the reserves, I think 30 years or something like that, to um active duty's 20 years, and there's hour requirements. If you take a break, the clock resets to a certain point. Like it's much more complicated than folks think. Um, Children have unstable schooling situations and are frequently bullied. I'm sure you've heard the term military brats before. Spouses, especially female spouses, are often bullied and marginalized. I already described what a dependent is, but difficulty obtaining employment is a huge issue. I had a really hard time getting a job in Jacksonville. They lowballed me. They were going to pay me $25,000 a year salary. That's less than minimum wage for a full-time job working in special collections at a library with a master's degree that required nights and weekends. Sounds great. Why? Because, well, you're going to be leaving again in 2 years. I actually had an interview canceled in Norfolk when they looked at my resume, because it's pretty easy when you live in a military area to look at, locations of jobs and do the math. So yeah, it's very easy to not get a job when you're a military spouse. Families are often targeted of overseas terrorist organizations such as the Islamic State. I myself was targeted in 2016 because I mentioned Jeff was in the military on my SCA website. So that's all it takes. I had the FBI call me when I had no furniture in my house in San Diego. That's how quick this happened. The FBI went to my old apartment in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, looking for me to tell me that ISIS wanted me dead. So it never happened. They do have hit lists, but I had to have contact information. I had to do regular check-ins with the FBI. This really happened, by the way. I'm not kidding. Combat veterans often struggle gaining access to jobs, housing, and healthcare. Everybody already knows this, but homeless veterans are constantly a political talking point for the right wing. And I just want to go ahead and hammer this down, that Congress recently voted to cut funding to the VA by 20%. This happened 1 month after Jeff died in a VA facility, and I started my own therapy there. So for those of us who are registered to vote in the United States, please keep this in mind this year, because it is a presidential election year. And every member of the House of Representatives is up to vote, and 1/3 of the Senate is up to vote as well. So keep that in mind. Many active duty and veteran families are on assistance programs such as SNAP and welfare. This falls back to discriminatory practices in hiring military spouses and the consistent underpayment of junior enlisted personnel and retirement and disability pensions being a fraction of base pay without benefits. Financial burdens make hobbies such as the SCA impossible. I am currently receiving my husband's pension. It is fully taxed. He did not retire. He would have retired this March 24th coming up. I after taxes, a I get under $2,000 a month. What can I do with that? I can My rent is more than that. So obviously I work and everything like that, but it's very hard to, if you're already in your 40s, sometimes in your 50s, and you have to find a job, this can be very difficult. But I do want to point out that much like the SCA, the military is approaching DEIB seriously. This is making a lot of politicians very angry and costing the service funding and leadership. As we know, um, a lot of leadership positions in the US military are currently vacant because we have one senator who refuses to sign anything until TRICARE, not TRICARE, but military facilities outlaw abortion, which they don't actually provide. So again, keep that in mind when you go to the polls this fall. Much like the SCA, there is a pervasive myth of the military being far-right Christo-fascist white supremacists, and much like the SCA, this is not true. Missing stairs are a problem in the service, they are a problem in the SCA, and the service is split politically along the same percentages as the United States. So, true story, my husband got to speak for a transitioning sailor while we were in Jacksonville, I think, when the Trump administration was looking to kick this individual out. Jeff flew to DC, to the Pentagon, and stood in their defense in front of a board of inquiry, stating that their record as a sailor should not, their transitioning should not affect their ability to serve in the Navy. I'm not 100% sure what happened, but it sounded like the submarine service had their back. But unfortunately, if the Pentagon doesn't have your back, you're out. If the presidential administration doesn't have your back, things get worse. Most importantly, many enlistees just want a better life for themselves and their families. Here's a few ideas on how to be a chatelaine in a military heavy area. Identify nearby installations, branch of service, and types of units stationed there, and research PCS cycles to gain a better understanding of turnover. I do have maps on the following pages. If you are a chatelaine, please screenshot this, whatever you need. I'll be happy to talk to you at any time. 2, reinstate and reinforce the need for strongholds. Strongholds exist to create community for the armed forces. Do not let fighter cliques take over strongholds. This happened in Mayport. There is a stronghold in Jackson, in Castlemere here in Trimaris. That stronghold was mostly a fighter group. Nobody, as far as I was concerned, nobody was still in the Navy. And they were a little cliquish, a little standoffish when my husband was like, "Hey guys," they were like, "Who are you?" All right, great. 3, remember that the USS Nimitz used to be the Shire of Carrigmore, and that Drachenwald and the Palatine Barony of the Far West exist partly because of outside of the continental United States US military installations. The military is part of SCA history, folks. We've always been there. We are part of the reason why it spread the way that it did. 4, please assist with orders of precedence and respect foreign kingdom awards. This is a huge issue. This is how we get Marines with 3 AOAs and no peerages. 5, despite American culture, most MIL families do not want to be in the spotlight, and service members do not want to be constantly thanked for their service. That is the one thing that my husband could not stand. If he was in his uniform, out in public, he knew that people would be slobbering all over him, so he always changed. Most of the time, he never even talked about his service in the SCA unless it was with somebody else who was a service member, because it turns into like this issue of momentary patriotism and the pouring on of gratitudes, which I understand is a result of anti-military sentiments boomeranging back from Vietnam toward the Yellow Ribbon movement during Desert Storm. But a lot is a lot, and you're thanking somebody for doing their job, essentially. These are important tools. So this map right here, I'm going to open it up really quick. Hopefully it loads pretty good. It's an interactive map. It's not an error. It's fine. It's safe. Um, it's an interactive map on Google Maps that shows you every military base in the United States. So if you live in a location, as you can see, there's pretty much one in every state, bar none. So I'll just zoom in really quick. Here I am in the Tampa area. We have MacDill Air Force Base. We've got our Coast Guard bases. I believe Bradenton is also a Coast Guard base. Yeah. So these are all mostly Coast Guard around here. You go up to Jacksonville, of course.
We are not seeing that map.
You're not seeing that map? Okay. It isn't sharing that then. Please take a screenshot of that and go to the link. It is unfortunately a weird long link. It is a user created map on Google Maps. I do highly recommend checking it out. It was quite interesting for me to find it. So please copy that down, take a screenshot, best of your ability. Feel free to play with that map. It's a great deal of fun. As fun as it could be. And of course, Wikipedia is actually outdated as of 2018. We are starting to close bases in the Middle East, I believe. A lot of those were temporary, quote unquote, temporary anyway. But go ahead and give that a look. If you're in a state or a region that has a base near you, double check. If you're not sure if there's a base near you, double check. And feel free to learn a little bit more about what the service is doing in your area. But most importantly, service members, if you're listening to me right now, you have to do your part too. You cannot just wait for a welcome wagon. And I understand it's easy to be shy when you move so frequently. Fortunately, I happen to be an annoying extrovert, which helped balance out my husband wanting to stay inside all day and hide from human beings. Get in touch with your local group. Let the shadow lane know you're PCSing to that nearest installation. The shadow lane should know when new people are coming in and out anyway, and they'll be able to inform you about your local group, who to get in contact with, and when events are coming up. Join social media groups and introduce yourself. I did this every time we moved. I joined the Kingdom group, and then I would join the Barony group and say, hey, we are Anna and Jeff, and we're moving here from Kaid. We're moving here from the East, and we're going to be in your group because he's stationed at Point Loma. And it worked great, and that's really the best way to let people know that you're coming in. Letting people know that you're coming in also lets them know that you might already have precedence, but I'll get to that in just a hot minute. But if you want to stay involved, you can't wait for an invite. You have to go to events. You have to do your part too. You have to walk in and go, hey, I'm in the SCA. This is a new group. Tell me all about your culture, Have fun with the interkingdom anthropology. Don't shy away from it. And I have to press this as well. Like, as funny as it is, the Scallion article about the 3 AOAs, it is your job to keep the order of precedence current. Reach out to the Kingdom Herald in charge of the OP and give them your information. Maintain an SCA resume. I have an SCA resume, and you should probably have one too. If you're not in the service, you should have an SCA resume, and you should be updating your OP. And remember that the person most responsible for your SCA experience overall is you, bar none. So while there will always be someone who will give you a hard time. There's always going to be someone anti-military. There's always going to be someone who might be a bit of a bootlicker, as we like to call it. But at the end of the day, you are, responsible for what happens to you. If something goes wrong, speak up. If you're having a great time, also speak up. Make sure that the local group that you're a part of is aware that you're enjoying yourself just as much as they need to know in case something goes wrong. Because if you're enjoying yourself with that group, it makes them feel better that they are doing the right thing for you and that you have a support network there. I have nothing but love for my friends in Kite. I'm actually getting choked up right now because when the orders changed for us from San Diego, from Groton to Kings Bay. It was so stressful that the Barony actually came over my house and cooked us breakfast. Like, a bunch of people just descended upon our house, told us to sit down, cleared out our kitchen, cooked us this amazing brunch, and we just sat there and, like, ate all day, and they helped us go through things and stuff. Like, this really matters because things are not always great. So, making those friends and making those connections and enjoying yourself will make sure that you have a better overall experience. So, in summary, while our experience was mostly positive, there were some pretty substantial negative pitfalls that made us rethink participation. Service members are marginalized in the SCA, not because of ethnicity or identity, but because their experiences are overlooked. Chatelaines near military installations should acquaint themselves with basic procedures to be better suited to assist relocating troops, and military members need to speak up and advocate for themselves. So thank you all for coming. I am now open for questions. Please take down my contact information. I like being available for anybody, of course. I also just want to reach out because Jeff really wanted me to do this. Like, he really wanted to do this with me, and I wish that he was here. And so I'm sorry I'm getting a little choked up, but I know many people are here because of him. And I know that you all miss him just as much as I do. But I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing my screen so y'all can see my ugly cry face now. And and we can go ahead and and have some questions. So, and I see Izzy, I see his apprentice sister here, so I know that we're both a little rough. We're both a little rough around the edges right now. But yeah, thank you so much. Much love. Yeah.